Hi friends, welcome back for another Trinity Stamps video. This is Cassie. Today we're going to be making some trifold cards that use acetate and foiling. So let's talk about what we're using. We have our Frostbite Cafe. I didn't get a chance to use this at the beginning with the release, so I was so excited to ink this baby up. We also have our matching dies to go along with it. We're going to be using the Frosty foiled flakes. There are so many great snowflakes in here, and it's going to make a beautiful background. And then we're also going to be using the embossed edge hills and slopes. I've used this for a ton of cards already, and I love it. So let's talk about our paper as well. This is going to be a 5x7. I have a piece of blue cardstock that measures 7 inches by 10 inches, scored at 5 inches, and that is upside down. And then we have a piece of white cardstock that measures 5x7. And then I have a piece of acetate that measures 5.5 inches by 7 inches. We're going to have that fold over, and I'll show you when we get there. So I did go ahead and stamp out all of my images onto some Express It cardstock using some Blackout ink because I plan to do some alcohol marker coloring. So I wasn't sure exactly what images I wanted where, so I decided to stamp all of them and all of their sentiments. And guess what? We use all of them as well. I'm going to make 2 cards. And then I have my Olo markers. So I'll start out just coloring these, and I've got this doubled up. I don't color this fast, and eventually we are going to speed this up about 8 times, but I am just putting down a little bit of blue violet. If you've watched me color penguins at all, I typically don't color them gray or black. I like to color them violet, blue, blue-violet. Occasionally I'll do the gray, but today I decided to make some blue-violet, almost more of a blue penguin. So we've got our colors up on the screen, and I always find it funny, but I've colored enough with alcohol markers. I find it funny that when you put down that darker color, it has a tendency to not look good until you start doing your blending. So I like to go lightest to darkest. That's no secret. If you've watched me before, of course I screwed up there and started with the darker one. You can always fix that if you're not used to that. Again, as I've always said, do what is comfortable and right for you. A lot of people love to go dark to light. I don't. I feel like I use a lot more ink when I do it that way. So as you can see, I'm just going to go along on these little penguins, and we'll start with our Blue Violet 2.3. The tummy color that I used and their little face, I used a Blue Violet, I think it was a 2.0. And you'll notice, obviously, I left a lot of white space there as well. Don't be afraid of the white space. You can always color it in if you don't like it, but you can't take it away as easily if you color it up or cover it up. So I kept mostly white on their bellies, just put a little bit of that blue violet, that lightest blue violet color in there, and then I blend out all of those colors. Here we are speeding this up about 8 times. I love to color. I know most of you who are watching this probably love to color as well. It's something kind of therapeutic. And so I don't mind just popping on some music or a book on tape or even a podcast or whatnot and having all these images stamped out and just coloring. It's, to me, again, super therapeutic and so much fun. Now, picking out the color combination, sometimes I struggle with that, so I will go to Pinterest and I will just kind of look up, if I know there's a color I wanted to use, which in this case was that blue violet, I'll look up color combinations that include blue violet. And I was able to find a color combo that used this blue, a turquoise. I will use like an orangish color for their beaks and their feet. And then I also bring in red. And I decide we're just going to go ahead and not make this too complicated. And all of their coats and their scarves are going to be red and white. That's it. We're just going to stick to a very simple color palette. And it's funny, as I was coloring these, I was imagining these little penguins living in a community where all they had were red and white clothes available to them. I don't know why. Am I the only crazy one that does stuff like that? Just thinks of little scenarios or little scenes for these guys and, plays it out in my head? Yeah, I probably am. Either way, I do love this color combination, and I think the little red, white, and then the little blue penguins, I guess I was channeling my inner America as well. I don't know, but love it. So, and then we're just going to go in and fill in some of that with some gray, those neutrals that, you always seem to need. So that'll work on like his goggles. And then we bring in some brown for the fishing pole and the coffee and things like that. But again, I just wanted to keep this fairly simple. sometimes you overthink it when you're going color combinations and I like to keep it simple. So like I said, there we have it. And then once everything is all colored, which doesn't take too crazy long, I am going to bring in the matching dies that go along with this. Obviously, you don't need the matching dies. It does make it a little bit quicker if you have them, if you don't mind fussy cutting. This is a fun one to fussy cut, but the dies are super helpful as well. So I'm just going to tack all that down with a little bit of mint tape, and then I'll run that through my die cutting machine, and then we'll set those all off to the side so that we can use them on our cards later. And I will show you the process of one card that I make, but the other card's basically the same. Okay, so we are going to do some hot foiling, and it's funny, I wanted to make an A7 card, and I thought, how's that going to work? Because our Glimmer hot foil plate is not 5x7. However, I did discover that wherever those plates are touching, it obviously is going to heat up the entire plate. So keep that in mind. And it may not be as hot towards those edges, but I didn't seem to have too much of a problem. I went ahead and took my white glimmer foil that I'm using, and I stuck that right on top of the blue cardstock that I plan to foil. And I'm now just kind of moving around my snowflakes where I want them on this background. So it is pretty side up. That foil is pretty side up, and then we put our snowflakes down on top of that this way. And then I'm going to bring in some mint tape, and I'm going to tape everything down because, again, I wanted to make more than one. So I wanted those snowflakes to stay in the same spot, basically, so I didn't have to do this again. Also, it just makes it a little easier to transfer this now to the Glimmer Hot Foil system. And then I can save that mint tape for other projects like, holding dies down or holding paper down or whatever it is you might need to do. So then I'm just going to wrap this around that paper to make sure that it stays in place. And this was basically a card base, an A7 card base, but I couldn't have it open. It wouldn't go through my die cutting machine that way. So we do have it folded, and that's okay. It actually does give a little bit more of like a shim. And here I am looking at it going, those plates aren't going to fit all the way across that. You know what? We will figure it out when we get there. So I make my sandwich, run it through my die cutting machine, and then I peel this away, and it actually does an amazing job. There's only one snowflake that didn't do a very good job, as you can see, but I'm not really that concerned about it. We're going to splatter away on this because I felt like this background just needed a little more, and splatter is very forgiving. So it can cover a multitude of issues, as I always say. So I've got I've got a cat actually that wants to join. So I'm going to give him a bunch of kisses and send him on his way. And then we have some Picket Fences Distress Paint. I'm going to put that onto an acrylic block and then just splatter that all over that background, kind of focusing on that one snowflake that didn't cover very well. You're not going to notice it too much on the final card because it's more at the bottom of the card, and that gets covered by our scene. And then I'm also going to bring in some of that Trinity Gold palette, the Trinity Stamps Gold palette. The palette in the store looks different, but it's the same. So it just looks a little different. And the one in store is a little cheaper. So I've splattered the silver all over that background. We have tons and tons of beautiful splatter all over that. Adds some texture, makes it look like it's snowing a bit more. And I am so happy with how that turned out. We're going to set that off to the side to dry. And then I have the acetate. I said it was 5.5 inches, so I'm going to score it at 5 inches. We are just going to build a little lip. That lip is going to wrap around that white piece of cardstock. So I'm just making sure that's foiled well using my ergonomic Teflon folders that Trinity Stamps has. And then I will just make sure that that score line is nice and enforced. And it is. It looks great. So here's what we'll bring in, some rip and stick tape. There are 2 different sizes in the store. I'm going to use the 1/4 inch, and all we need to do is just put a little bit of that on that lip that's hanging over. I've got my white cardstock just backed up against that. We'll peel off that release paper, and then we can just fold that right over the top, and then we will have basically another base. It's just the front is acetate. And then those will fold into each other. You'll see that later, but those will fold into each other. So now we can build up our scene. I'm going to bring in our embossed edge hills and slopes, and I'm going to die cut those. I'm actually going to die cut 2 for every piece, and you'll see why later. And I'm bringing in my Crafty Gluefriend, and we'll start building up our scene. So there is the base, our little our snow grounding, and then we'll pick in some of the pieces and just build up our scene. And then once I'm happy with how we've built that up, we'll start gluing all of these pieces down. Love it. And if you like, which in the final pictures I did end up doing it, if you want to add some grounding to it, you can use an alcohol marker to kind of go around where their feet are and add some shadowing. But we're just going to glue all these little cuties down and in place. And like I said, I did die cut just out of some white cardstock all these pieces that you see there, except the little guy holding the fish sickle. And the reason for that is I want that back to not look so sloppy. So once we get to that point, we'll talk about it a little bit more. I decided on the "you're the coolest" sentiment. We're just going to put that down. And then we'll flip this over, and that's where I bring in all those white die cut pieces. We are just going to cover up all that coloring. It makes it look a little less sloppy, a little more finished. So we just cover that up. It also adds to the acetate. It makes sure that the acetate is a little bit, I don't know, reinforced, I guess, a little stronger maybe. And any kind of acetate will work mostly. I ended up using some, it's a transparency film. Now I'm dating myself big time. We used transparencies a lot when I was in school. I don't think they use them now in school, but anyway, so I use a transparency film. It works great. They're inexpensive, and I can, cut them down however. Now the slope, I ended up having to make a little bit bigger, and you'll see it hangs off the edges. I just wanted to make sure I had it lined up perfectly. And then what I'll do is I'll use my guillotine trimmer and trim off all of that excess. So now we have a base. So what I'm going to do is we're going to glue these together to make a trifold. And I am going to, you may need to trim off just a hair on this piece because it's going to overlap, just a hair, tiny, tiny bit. And you may need to trim off a hair on this piece. Again, just a tiny little sliver. You may not, depending on how your pieces fit together, but I find it does help a little bit. And then I'll use my Crafty Gluefriend on the inside blue piece here. And then all I'll do is take my white piece and stick that down on top. And then we can trifold that up. It's just a fun way to make a card, really. And then I'm going to bring in these brand new embellishments. These are the silver Twinkle rhinestones. There's a bunch of different ones out there. Using my Crafty Gluefriend and my pickup stick, that glue will dry clear, but check out these cute, adorable little trifold cards that use acetate and foiling. I love them, and I hope you like them too. If you do, please leave a comment down below. Go ahead and like that video and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And as always, I will see you very soon in another video. Bye, everybody.